Welcome to Buy, Sell, Hold, the Sports Car Market Podcast. Market experts and car friends for over 30 years, Keith Martin and Mark Green have come together through their mutual love for collector cars. Keith and Mark will take you on a ride into the collector car market, talking with industry experts, helping you navigate your collector car journey so that you know when to make your own decisions to buy, sell, or hold.
Hey, this is Mark Green from the Cars Yeah podcast.
And this is Keith Martin from Sports Car Market Magazine.
Absolutely. And welcome to Buy, Sell, Hold, the essence of collecting. This is show number 2. So, Keith, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Portland, and I'm just thinking about taking a collector car out for a drive this weekend.
Well, I think that's a good idea. It is raining here in Gig Harbor. I'm just a couple hours north of you, so you got the better of the day here, I think, for a drive in an old car. You know, before we have our guest come in today, I wanted to chat with you about something remarkable that we've all seen going on in the market with a couple Datsuns. We had one that sold for an insane amount of money and one that just sold for reasonable money. I would love for you to talk about these two with our listeners and give us some of your expert opinion of why did we have this massive discrepancy between these two cars?
Well, the one car was a 19 or 20,000 mile original car, completely untouched, fully documented, essentially one owner, that sold for $330,000.
Excuse me, I need some water here.
I know. Well, and that was on, this is on Bring a Trailer. I asked a friend of mine who collects Corvettes, I said, if this had been a 63 Corvette, 327, 340 horse, 20,000 miles, one owner, what would that car have brought? And he said, about $1.25.
Wow.
So Ferrari Boxer is now less than $300,000. 240Zs, they made about 400,000 of. We talk about numbers of 1,000 being high, or like the Ford GT is 3,000 and some. Oh, it's got so many. They built so many. How can they ever be worth anything? 400,000. So the way that I spin that number in my head is that there have been at least 1 million people that have owned 240Zs over the years, right? If you assume each car was owned by two people at one time or another. So out of those 1 million people, there were a couple of people who have a lot of money who wanted the most original 240Z on the planet. And they were willing to pay whatever it took. They had 5 bidders when they got above $150,000.
5. Wow.
5. Now, the next day or 2 days later, a 240Z with 70, 80,000 miles and modified with a 5-speed and a really nice-looking car sold for less than $22,000. The first buyer paid a $310,000 premium to get perhaps the most original 240Z on the planet. What do you think of that, Mark?
Well, I got a nosebleed right now because we're in altitudes I'm not used to going to. But what's incredible to me about this, and you and I had this talk the other day about cars and collector cars. And when you have an original car, what do you do with it? Because every mile you put on it brings down the value if that matters to you. I'm kind of wondering if this guy that paid over $300,000 doesn't really care what the cost was. He just had to have it.
Well, I think that's part of it. What he or she does with it next is interesting because every mile you put on the car devalues it. Every time you take it out in public, you're running the risk of something happening to it. I mean, God forbid somebody, runs a red light and T-bones your car. I'm not a big fan of high-priced, low-mileage original cars because they are really trophy queens or kings, and they need to be kept shuttered away from everything. I don't get any value in use from them. But I just think whoever bought this car, let's assume that they didn't have to mortgage their house and take out a loan to buy it, that it was avocational money that they could have spent on a boat or something else, and they just had to have it, like some people have to have a piece of jewelry or have to have a work of art. And the numbers made sense to them.
Absolutely. Well, it's outstanding. It's incredible. And that is the market these days. It's kind of all over the place. Buy, sell, hold is about just that. Buying cars, selling cars, holding cars. Now, I'm going to give us a little scoop here about our friend Keith Martin. You just decided to let a car go, right?
I did. I had 7 Alphas. I thought that was enough. In fact, maybe 2 too many. And I decided to part with my 61 Giulietta Sprint Speciale.
Oh, beautiful car.
A beautiful car, a Bluette with a new interior in it. A subscriber came in from Denver, test drove the car this morning. I had priced the car at $120,000, which was lower than they've been selling for, but I thought the right number in this market today. And the car was a driver, not a Concours car. If it had been a Concours car and it was 3 months ago, that would have been a $175,000 car. I pegged it at 120. The guy flew out. He took a very nice, long, relaxed test drive. He came back and he said, "This is my car now. Thank you."
Bravo. Bravo. Well, it's just a testament to the fact that at some point we are willing to let go of these things because it's time, whatever that means in your life. And now it has a new caregiver. And are you happy with the guy you sold it to?
The guy is great. He's planning on taking it on the Copper State 1000.
Oh, wonderful.
The Alpha Club's national conventions in Colorado Springs next year. He said, if I come out there, I can take the car to that. And I said, what, not drive one of my own Alphas from Portland to Colorado Springs?
Why not?
No, it was a gentleman. And again, I think when you're very realistic about your cars and price them well, they'll sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, bravo to you and the buyer. I think it's fantastic. Onward and upward, as they say. Well, we're going to be back in a minute and talk with our guest today, Steven Serio. But first, a word from Keith's team at Sports Car Market. They've got a special deal for you. We'll be right back. Here's another buy, sell, hold special offer. Do you love knowing what the collector car market has done when it comes to values? Of course you do. The Sports Car Market Platinum Auction Database puts 31 years of auction results right at your fingertips, on your mobile device or your computer, no matter where in the world you are. With nearly 300,000 records, that's right, 300,000, it has the information you need to make an informed decision on that oh-so-important classic or vintage vehicle purchase. You'll receive all this for a mere $5.50 a month. That's less than the cost of a sandwich. As a Buy, Sell, Hold podcast listener, use the code PLAT50, that's right, PLAT50, to get this special discount. Just go to sportscarmarket.com/platinum50 and the cart will automatically discount your order. Plus, Platinum subscribers also receive access to the full library of back issues of Keith Martin's Insider's Guides, a valuable resource for anyone in the market for collector vehicles. That's sportscarmarket.com/platinum50. Get your discount today. So, Keith, who are we talking with today?
We're talking to a good friend of mine, Steve Serio. He's been a writer for Sports Car Market for decades now. He's a Lotus and Aston Martin dealer, and he has a wry sense of humor, which is why we assigned him the A-Team van to review for Sports Car Market.
I love it. Well, Stephen, I'm going to give you a brief little intro here, so bear with me. I may repeat a few things, but it's worth repeating. Steven Serio is the president of Aston Martin of New England, Lotus Motorsports, and the Bond Group. That sounds mysterious, 007 stuff. He started his business in 1987, specializing in exporting right-hand drive 1960s, here it is, Aston Martins, 007, back to the UK. And today, selling new Aston Martins and Lotus cars is about 10% of what he really does, which is sourcing, buying, and selling rare European classic cars. He has helped to build some amazing, large, and important collections of Porsches, Ferraris, Aston Martins. Over the many years he's been in business, Steven's goal is to keep his collection to about a dozen cars, which of course he's never been very successful at. He's an avid 1,000-mile rally driver. He plays golf, does some shooting, and he loves to spend time with his family and on the road. His first career, by the way, was like mine. It was in advertising, television, photography. He grew up outside of Boston. So, Steven, welcome to Buy, Sell, Hold. Would you tell our listeners maybe just a little bit about yourself before we jump into the questions?
Yeah, Mark. First of all, I want to thank you and Keith for inviting me on the show. This is always a fun thing to do. As Keith will tell you, I've participated in a great many of the Pebble Beach, Arizona, Amelia Island seminars for Sports Car Market Magazine, and I really enjoy the hobby side of my business. My day job, which I'm lucky, darn lucky to have, and that I've groomed since November of 1987, is really being involved with as many exciting European cars that I can really I mean, my day job is the dream job for a lot of people. I joke about it because it's retail, and that can be very frustrating at times, but I think I have one of the greatest jobs on the planet. And to get you updated a little bit with my day job, I'm in the middle of transitioning from being a new car and classic car dealer. I sort of took the view not long ago that I really enjoy traveling and I really enjoy sourcing, super rare cars for people, and that I would let somebody else enjoy the new car business. So I'm in the middle of selling my Aston Martin and Lotus business to a local car guy here in Boston, and I plan on really devoting more time to really about 20 people that I view as very important and wonderful customers, and to keep their collections, with new and exciting cars. Because as we all know, we never have the right combination of cars. Everybody's always changing and wanting the next thing, and maybe getting a little, I don't know, bored's not the right word, but sometimes cars run their course, and it's fun selling cars for folks, and it's fun finding them for folks. So that's kind of what my life has been, up to in 2020.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. We're going to start with a question Keith wants to ask you, I should say, about what's going on right now. Take it away, Keith.
Yeah, Steve, if you could describe the collector car market today using just one word, what would that word be and why?
Mature. I would say the market has really gone through, since I've been doing this since 1987, I'm in my third full cycle of the ups and downs of the popularity of some cars and the desirability of others, and the value cycles where things, much like the stock world, go up and down. And I think we are now in a very mature cycle for the cars that I've been around for the last 33 years. And I think if I can explain that a little bit, the collector is mature. There are very few people I find that are doing kind of a willy-nilly purchase and sale of cars that we got caught up in this frenzy sort of in the 2009 through 2015 period. I think the market has had a big shakeout, and the people that are still involved are the mature collectors that had always loved cars for the last, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And it's gone back to that. The frivolity has left the marketplace.
So is that good for the buyer or the seller?
Oh, I think it's a very good, market, not to sound like the classic double-edged sword sort of answer. I think it's great for sellers if you've owned cars for a very long time and they are wonderful cars without exception. I don't think there is a problem finding a new home for them. If you are the fellow that got involved and didn't know really what you were buying, and you kind of watched other people do it and you thought it was going to be a financial play, this is going to be a very sad time in your life, because you're just going to have to cut your losses and move on, especially if you bought at the top of the market and you bought because you didn't love the car, and you bought because you were mimicking other people do things that you thought you should do, and it wasn't in your DNA and in your soul and in your heart that these are things that, if you paid $100,000 for a car and you bought it because you loved it and you were going to, drive it like your hair was on fire and drove it like you stole it, I think there's a problem. I think you're going to be very sad when somebody offers you $40,000 for the car you overpaid for and you didn't buy the right one.
There you go. Well, we always start this thing with what we call the 3-car story. So, Keith, take it away.
Stephen, I believe that buy, sell, hold is actually the mechanism by which the collecting market is made, because every decision is a decision to buy something, to sell something, or to hold on to something. What we'd like to do is talk to you about a car that you sold, a car that was a significant vehicle that maybe it took you a long time to get, and that you sold it. Now you look back and you wonder if you should have done that.
Well, I assume that you're talking about the regrets that I don't have being in business for cars that I couldn't hold on to, Keith. And not to get down a a different rabbit hole here, but boy, I wish I could have held on to the Alan Mann GT40 that I had in inventory, the Mark I car with the 289 engine. I wish I could have held 10,000 mile Lusso in all its original glory. There are a lot of things that were in business that I had to sell because I had to stay in business, and they were just items that, I couldn't keep. But in my own personal collection, I don't have many regrets about cars that I bought and sold, but there's one that in particular, I fell under the ether of beauty and the freshman era of not trying something out and fitting in it. And I think if you remember from seminars years ago, I had always lusted for a Seata 208S.
Right.
And I bundled up 3 cars. I had a 1956 European 356 coupe, the very first European. I had a 1969 246 GT L Series Dino, and a I believe it was 96 or so 993 RS. And I thought, the only way I'm going to be able to afford this 208S is to sell these 3 cars, which I had loved, but it was time to try to bundle them into a dream car. And the dream car sort of became a little bit of a nightmare because it rolled into the shop, and I looked at it and thought, this is the most exquisite thing I've ever wanted, laid my eyes on, and it is absolutely a glorious automobile. And I didn't fit in it.
Oh no!
I just could not. No. I could not get comfortable in the car. I suffer from having really 2 rotten knees from various little injuries over the years, and I couldn't drive the car for more than about 40 minutes without being in sheer agony.
Oh, no.
To answer your question, I regretted selling it, but I also kind of regretted buying it. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds, because I got rid of 3 cars that I really loved and thought I was going to love this more, and I didn't. And foolish me, I'm in the business.
The grass wasn't greener on the other side.
No, there wasn't even any grass. I mean, it was like a painted bit of concrete, dark green.
Oh,
so, if that makes sense to the question, Keith, I mean, I loved the pursuit. I waited for one. It was really just, and every time I see one today, I think, God, I wish I had just had a better experience with that car. But I tell people all the time, when you buy something, try it out first, take it home, put it in your driveway, make sure you love it, make sure your wife loves it, make sure it fits in your garage, take it for a proper hour drive. And then after you own it for a year before you do anything to it. Don't talk about repainting it or retrimming it, or make sure you love it before you spend any more money on it. And I was the biggest
victim of your own advice.
Believer of my exactly.
Yeah. And what about, so that was a car that you bought that you lusted after, and it didn't turn out the way you thought it would be. It just you had to look at yourself and say, this car is not the right car for me, even though the fantasy is the right one. The car is not the right one.
Yeah,
exactly. It was the supermodel that just couldn't hold the conversation at dinner. I mean, it's something that's sexist and awful, but I mean, it's the girl you always wanted to date, and it was just a big disappointment.
Yeah, had one of those.
Let's talk about a car. Let's talk about a car that you've sold that you really enjoyed, but you ended up having to part with the car. Why would something like that happen?
Well, that's easy too. A Speedster that I owned. I bought in 1996 that I had never any intention of selling. And the world, my world in business came to a sort of crashing halt when the last recession hit. And I had to part with some cars to keep my business going. I did not mind parting with my Gullwing because I never really bonded with it. It was an event car. I didn't have the right events to use it for. I didn't mind parting with a 356 Carrera 2 Coupe because, again, it was redundant in many ways to the experience I was getting in my Speedster, but I had to sell the Speedster as well, and it really broke my heart. So that was October of 2009, And I sold it to a fantastic collector, a guy by the name of Gary Shavitz, who's very well known on the East Coast and probably nationally as a fantastic car guy. Gary honored his word. When I sold it to him, I said, if you ever sell this, I would just like first right of refusal back. After I had purchased another Speedster after having, real seller's remorse, I bought another Speedster and spent 4 years painstakingly restoring it and building a fantastic rally hot rod, which is the car, Keith, that you've seen me use on rallies. Yep. Gary called me up literally the week I was shaking down my second Speedster, and he said, would you like to buy your old car back?
Oh no.
And I thought, well, this is a dilemma.
Yeah.
I've spent 4 years building another one. And yes, of course, I would like to buy it back. So I paid roughly twice what I sold the car to him for because the market had shifted, and I bought it back. And that may segue into your next question. So I have two of them today.
Wow.
So you have two Speedsters today.
Yes.
Good for you.
Now, you used the word redundant early on for a Carrera and a Speedster in the experience. Wouldn't having two Speedsters be doubly redundant?
Yes.
Well, listen, Smarty Pants, you're absolutely right, which I think I'm going to let you, I think you're going to ask me another question about cars that I would like to own.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm going to save the punchline for having two Speedsters.
Okay.
To answer that question.
Let's go to a hold question. Is there a car that you would just hold, that you can't imagine selling it under any circumstances?
Yes, that is the white gray Speedster that took me 4 years to build. And if I had to slowly sell every single one of the 15 cars I own right now in our family, between my wife and I, we have 15 sort of fun cars of all various, sort of makes and sizes and shapes and slow and fast and 2 doors and 4 doors. And that would be the last car I would sell because I have dialed that car in over the 7 rallies that I've used it for. I'm hoping to use it on 3 more rallies this year. It is just the most glorious thing, in my view, to drive because it goes very quickly. You seem like you're going a lot faster in it than you're actually going, with the exception of launching a generator, which did not prevent us from proceeding forward on one rally a few years ago. The car has been flawless. I really want to wear it out and repaint it and rebuild it again one day.
So, Steve, I want to move this conversation slightly sideways. When you talk about taking 4 years to build, I just sold an Alpha today, and I checked back. It took me 5 years to get that car into rally touring condition. And when I look at all my cars, it takes to have them the way that I want them, which is the way that you want them. They feel good. The suspension is right. They feel like they're maybe 4 years old, and they really work. I think that takes 4 to 5 years with an old car because everything is so old on these cars.
Well, I think that's fair observation and fair comment. I mean, don't get me wrong. We weren't in the 4 years it took me to restore that car. I bought that car off of eBay when you could still do such things. It was in a garage in Staten Island, had been taken apart in 1975, had been off the road since 1967. It was in as many pieces as you could put a car and was the perfect donor for the hot rod I wanted to build. If I had set my mind to it and I had the wherewithal to just build it straight through and keep writing checks and keep paying for it, we probably could have built the car in 18 months. I had the luxury of time on my side, and I also had the sort of sadness of not being able to write checks. I'd have to, save some money for that fund and, pay for the paint, pay for the interior, pay to have an engine made. And I purposely took my time about it because I didn't want to rush. But then once it was done, it was good. But, thanks to John Wilhoit when he developed a 2.1 liter engine for 356s. So that became a thing that made the car go, instead of having 60 horsepower, the car has now over 150. I changed the transmission in the car to stay up with the engine. I've changed the seats a couple of times, and I've gone back to the Speedster seats and taken the coupe seats out. So it's now dialed in, and I honestly don't think there's anything I could do to the car to make it any better for the the uses I have for it. I mean, I'm not going racing through Torrey Pines chasing Phil Hill in the car. I'm, going on, Keith, your rally in Oregon, and that car worked in the high desert at 85 degrees and worked at Mount Hood at 32 degrees perfectly.
How much money do you think you have invested in this car?
About $400,000.
What do you think? And what do you think if you were selling that as a dealer? What do you think you could get for it?
Well, not to blow my own horn, I just turned down 6.
Oh,
for your car.
And it came out of left field. It really surprised me that this guy said, "I just really want to buy your car." And I said, "Well, it's not for sale." And he said, "Well, if I give you $600,000 for it, would you sell it?" And half of my brain went, "Oh God, absolutely." And the other half said, "Well, what am I going to use all year?" And I couldn't think of anything else to buy. And that is a king's ransom. That's a lot of money, but I couldn't think of anything else to buy. And I think, Keith, we touched upon this in Arizona. There is a market where cars that are built by the right people, and not by me, but by, John Wilhoit having done the engine and transmission and all the guys that helped build this car, much like Rod Emery or Singer or whoever's building a hot rod, there is a new class of collector that would rather have a beautifully done hot rod that looks original versus an original car. I mean, I point in case, I have a 37,000 mile Speedster here in my shop that we're asking $485 for, that will drive exactly as it did in 1956, because with the exception of a coat of paint, it is 100% original. I think my hot rod is much easier to sell.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I got to drive a John Wilhoit car with the 2.2 that he has now last summer down in Los Angeles, and I just about melted. I am sitting here with a giant smile on my face. I think it's cool. Let's take a short break. Thank our sponsors. Actually, a nice little deal that Keith Martin's team has for us, and we'll be right back with the dream vehicle question. Here is one of the country's finest automotive events that you should not miss, the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance. Now in its 25th year, this multi-day iconic event takes place March 5th through the 8th at the Ritz-Carlton on the beautiful Florida barrier island of Amelia. You'll enjoy seminars, road tours, an RM Sotheby's auction preview, silent auction, a delicious banquet dinner, the Porsche driving experience, and Saturday's Cars and Coffee at the Concours with over 450 incredible cars and inspiring people. Then there's Sunday's main event, the spectacular Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance, where you'll get to see 300 significantly historic vehicles. Roger Penske is this year's honoree, and there will be many past honorees attending who are the leaders and shakers in the automotive world. The Amelia Island Concours is a 501c nonprofit foundation that raises money for North Florida and many national charities. Learn more at ameliaconcours.org. That's Amelia, CONCOURS.org, and we'll see you there. I've been subscribing to Sports Car Market magazine for decades, and it shows up like clockwork in my mailbox every month. But what about when I'm on the road? Did you know that digital subscriptions to Sports Car Market are just $2.50 a month when you sign up with the promo code DIGITAL50? That's less than a cup of coffee. You get 50% off regular price just for listening here to Buy, Sell, Hold. Plus, digital subscribers receive instant access to a year's worth of back issues and the exclusive Insider's Guide, including the 2020 Insider's Guide to the beautiful Amelia Island Concours, and all the spring auctions as well. No more boredom while sitting at the airport or on your flight. To get your Sports Car Market digital subscription at this discount, go to sportscarmarket.com/digital50. Your order will automatically get you the 50% off. What a deal. Go and sign up today at sportscarmarket.com/digital50. All right, we are back. I want to go back to talking about Porsches, but that's the kind of guy I am. But I want to ask you this question. The ultimate dream ride that you don't already own, the car that we like to say ticks all the boxes. I'd love to have you share your thoughts about that, the design, the looks, the engineering, usability, fun factor. And I know Keith wants to add a little piece to this, right?
Yeah, I think, Steve, what brings all of us at Sports Car Market together is that everybody who's involved with the magazine sees value in use in their vehicles. I don't know any of contributors who just put cars on a trophy shelf and don't use them. So really what this question is about is the car that you look at, you say, not the most expensive car, but the car that you could just have a hell of a good time with, and it works for you in terms of value per dollar spent and use.
Well, I think I'm going to come full circle because this is now the putting the bow around why I have the second Speedster. And I had no idea I wanted this car until, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago when it landed in my shop. Without going into how I ended up with it, as a piece of inventory, direct from Aston Martin, a brand new Aston Martin Zagato shooting brake fell on my lap in my business as inventory. I knew very little bit about the car before the car got here. And every single day that I looked in the car in the month of January, I kept thinking to myself, how can I keep this car? Because I can see myself driving it across the country. I can see myself driving down to Cape Cod. I can take the kids to basketball practice, soccer practice, school. And it's a thing that really, I would have never have predicted this, which I guess proved to me, if you had said to me in December, what car was your dream car, I would have said a Bugatti EB110 because I was a dealer for those cars. I was meant to be a dealer for those cars when they were new. And then, of course, the whole thing crashed and burned before the cars came to the United States. And that's always been a dream car for me. And I think I wrote about that in the magazine once, that I would love to put 100,000 miles on one of those cars because of the way it's engineered. It's so unique. My ego insists that I own things that nobody else has or that are unique. It's just the way I've always looked at cars. I've tried to have things that, even with the Speedster, I had to have it, a color that didn't exist in the Speedster world. And, the hot rod is different. But the shooting brake is the most ridiculous thing because it's a 2-seat hatchback. And it's all carbon fiber. It's got a carbon fiber interior. It looks like something Darth Vader would drive because it's black on black. And I'm going to sell my other Speedster that I boomeranged back to me from Gary Shavitz in order to fund buying this shooting brake. And I may have to sell my Volkswagen thing and maybe my 500e Mercedes-Benz to sort of get the funds together to buy this. And I think my first Aston Martin that's knocked me really, out of my shoes since the first generation Vanquish in the early 2000s. And I guess it's also going to be a nod for me being an Aston Martin dealer since 1996 and now sort of getting out of that business. It's going to be a nice memory for me, but it's 600 horsepower. I mean, I took it out the other day and thought, oh, Lord, this is just going to be so much fun to drive. And probably nowhere near the answer I would have given you a month ago.
I'm shocked. I'm really surprised.
But, Steve, I think in a way, your choice reflects on what's happening to a segment of the market today where we see late model supercars going up in value because a lot of people want to get into a fast car, but they want it to work. This Aston you're getting into, it'll have AC and safety and all. It'll be a real car and fabulous performance.
Well, and Keith, you nailed it because I have said to people, the cars I tend to sell are cars that aren't old enough to be classic cars and vintage cars from the 50s and 60s, which they're true analog. So the thing is, things that if they break, you can fix them by the side of the road and are really great, simple cars. And they're not new enough to be convenient. And the only car that falls in that trap right now is a 1980s Aston Martin V8 Vantage that I own. And I own that car, I think, because I like to look at it more than I like to drive it. And I love the smell of the original interior in it. But the AC is hinky. The Lucas Electrics in it are just at best marginal. It's a glorious looking thing. And that car's kind of on the bubble for that reason that you just said. I love driving my brand new 911 GTS Targa because I can get in it, commute, PDK transmission, Bluetooth, beautiful stereo. it goes like stink. And the Zagato is falling under that new car, supercar thing where I think all I'll have to do, cross my fingers, is change the oil in this for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years and just keep driving it.
This is some pretty cool revelations we are talking about. And all of us guys are kind of in the same age group here. So we're falling into this. Keith and I had this talk just earlier today talking about my 87 930 Turbo. And the same messages were coming up and the same tugging happening with me going, I like the car, but it's an all original car. Every time I drive it, I'm risking it. And that takes the fun out. And the idea of this something brand new or newer that has all those features. Plus, Keith, you mentioned it in our pre-show chat, safety, because these old cars are dangerous. If somebody in an SUV T-bones you, you're a goner. So, wow. This is revolutionary, I think.
Well, I've gone from the old car guy to the new car guy all of a sudden.
Yes.
There's a whole generation of collectors that weren't raised on cars where we had to put side curtains on them when it started to rain.
Yeah.
I love doing that, by the way.
Or I remember one of my salespeople a long time ago was driving the Triumph Spitfire, and he called me and he said, "Where's the button for the power top?" And I said, "Oh, it's right next to the low fuel warning light. Have you seen that?"
Yeah, it's on your phone. It's an app.
Well, but I just think people, driving, a lot of driving today isn't really much fun. And so you want to be in a car, if the driving isn't fun, the car relaxes you until you can get out on a country road. I mean, that's the value in new cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, we could talk for hours, but we are running out of time. So I hate to be the killjoy here, but Stephen, this has been.
Are.
I know. Well, we're gonna have you back, or I'll invite you back to Cars Yeah. It's been a few years. By the way, you were a guest on Cars Yeah back in September of 2016. That's how long it's been. So I got to get you back on Cars Yeah so we can extend this conversation. But before we let you go today, could you offer us some wisdom advice, because you're such a wise and smart man, on buying, holding, and selling cars? What would that piece of wisdom be?
Well, speaking from the heart, if you're not using it, use this phrase before. If you open your garage doors and your car isn't raising your blood pressure because when you're in it, it's making you excited, or it doesn't lower your pressure when you're just staring at it and calming you down and walking around your car and reading a magazine and sitting in your garage and looking at it because you love the artistic value of it, or you love some mechanical component of it, or this glorious bit of engineering that, somebody, Torrey Bugatti or Carroll Shelby or Enzo Ferrari, Ferrari Porsche put together, you probably should get rid of it. So I would hold everything that excites you in one moment and calms you in the next. I would sell everything that you're going to get around to using, and I would probably sell, if you have more than one project, you're never going to get to it. And I just gave this advice to a dear friend of mine who is laden with too many cars, and if he lived to be 300, he's never going to get the projects done. Sell all the stuff that's collecting dust that you're never going to use and put it into something that you're going to want. And what would you buy? Well, buy that thing that stops you dead in your tracks on the street, that really makes you feel like a kid again. And that happened to me in London one day when I saw a 2010 Porsche Sport Classic, and I worked and found one in Germany and did the EPA DOT thing and brought it to the country. And it just happened to me with this shooting brake. I just kept stopping and staring at it, and it took me completely by surprise. So I think if that's a complete answer, get rid of the stuff that's making you crazy as well. If you have something that you just can't get right and you're not having a wonderful moment with it, and it's a money pit, and you go out to drive it on Sunday and it doesn't start, maybe it's time. The car is telling you that it needs a new home.
I need a new home. Hey, what's the best way for our listeners to track you down and find out what you're doing these days? Website, social media?
Yeah. Well, for the time being, Instagram. I'm under the Real Bond group. And Bond, by the way, has nothing to do with James Bond, although it should, right? It has to do with the bond of friendship with people in my business. with a half a dozen guys I work very closely with around the world. That's where that name comes from. But the Real Bond Group on Instagram, my website for my office now is astonmartin-lotus.com. If I can mention, because the timing is perfect here, that Hannah Elliott from Bloomberg was kind enough to have just written a story about me. And if you go to Bloomberg and you put in my name or the fellow billionaires trust to buy their cars from, I couldn't think of a more kinder, more wonderful, glorious thing that was written about me that I certainly did not deserve, that Hannah did. That's how you can find me. And if you're in Boston, thank you. Please come by 85 Linden Street to Aston Martin of New England and Lotus Motorsports, and we'd love to have you come by and look at the cars and just visit and say hello.
You'll be there for a long time, by the way, so prepare, because you're going to have so much fun meeting Stephen. Again, listeners, you can find everything that we've talked about today on the Sports Car Market website. The podcast is listed there. It's also on my website, carsyeah.com, or you can find it under Cars Yeah Podcast on your mobile device. Everything's there for you to listen to. Stephen, thank you for being so generous today with your time and expertise. This was so much fun. Until we talk again.
I just want to thank you, Steve, for all the great articles you've written for us over all the years. And I forgive you for maligning me for the celery green Mondial Cabriolet that I bought.
There you go. It's on tape. The friendship,
Gentlemen,
the bonds are healed.
It's my honor to be here in the company of both of you. I can't thank you enough for being your guest. And let's drive it like you stole it, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, let's continue having fun with cars.
That's the way to do it. And listeners, again, next week we'll have another great show here on Buy, Sell, Hold. Hey, Mark Green here. If you love the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast, you'll want to listen to my Cars Yeah podcast, where over 5 years I've interviewed over 1,475 inspiring automotive enthusiasts. You'll have free access to my guest shows 5 days a week. These are amazing people who share their world around cars, trucks, and motorcycles. I take a deep dive into their businesses, and they share with you how they've wrapped their passion for vehicles into their lives. Plus, go to the carsyeah.com website and hit the free book button, and I'll email you my free Filler Up book. It's an ebook filled with beautiful fuel filler fun and inspiring quotes from my past guests. Once subscribed, you'll get my weekly blog as well. You can find all the Cars Yeah shows on carsyeah.com or on any mobile device using your podcast app. Just search for Cars Yeah Podcast and subscribe today. That way you'll get both Buy, Sell, Hold with Keith and me and the Cars Yeah Podcast delivered right to your mobile device or your computer. Thanks for listening.
We hope to have shed some light today on the collector car market. You can listen to all the Buy, Sell, Hold podcasts at sportscarmarket.com and carsyeah.com. You'll find hundreds of inspiring automotive enthusiasts on the Cars Yeah website as well. Be sure to log into sportscarmarket.com and subscribe to Keith's SCM weekly newsletter. You'll find digital issues, insider event guides, and price guides, along with our Platinum database, column profiles, classifieds, and many other resources. Join Keith and Mark next week to hear from another automotive industry leader who will help you determine when to buy, sell, or hold.